How far can a man fall before the world simply leaves him behind? That question lingers in the frozen air like a ghost, as New Year's snow sweeps across the Wyoming plains in 1878, coating the wide land in silence and grief. Daniel Whitaker stands alone at Snow Ridge Ranch, a tall, weathered man whose scar runs from cheekbone to jaw like a reminder life has never been gentle. He has buried his wife, Eleanor. He has buried his sleep. And some nights, he fears he has buried his heart as well. The cabin is dim except for the glow of the hearth. Lily, only 8 yet steady as a grown woman, watches her father carefully. She knows he tries to pretend, tries to smile, tries to keep breathing for her and for Jacob and little Rose. But even a child can see when hope has begun to thin. On this New Year's Eve, while fireworks might be bursting somewhere far away, here there is only wind. Only Lily kneeling by the fire, whispering into clasped hands, asking God to send someone, anyone, a miracle, because the world is too heavy for one man to carry alone. Outside, the storm thickens. Snow dances sideways. The cattle shift uneasily. Daniel forces himself into his coat, scar burning against the cold, because ranch work doesn't stop for grief, and storms don't care if a man is tired of living. The wind claws at him as he crosses the yard. His breath turns to ice. When he reaches the barn, he notices something wrong. The door is cracked open. The latch swings loose, and beneath the howl of the storm, he hears it. A faint, broken sound. A cry. Not the cry of livestock. The cry of a human soul clinging to the last thread of life. His heart strikes hard in his chest. He lifts his lantern higher, steps inside. Straw, frost, shadows. Then, her. A woman collapsed near the stalls, belly round with late pregnancy, bare feet blue with cold. No coat, no boots, only desperation. Her name is not yet spoken, but her terror fills the room. She is trembling so violently she can barely breathe. And still she tries to press herself into the shadows, as if the very sight of him might mean danger. Daniel kneels, his scar catching the light, his voice low, careful, steady. He has held death in his arms once already. He refuses to do it again. She is almost frozen. He wraps her in blankets, lifts her as though she weighs nothing, and carries her through the storm. Each step a promise he never expected to make. Inside the cabin, Lily gasps softly. Jacob falls silent. Rose clutches her doll tighter, but within moments the children move. Not in fear, but in instinctive kindness. Water, cloth, fire, quiet voices. The stranger lies near the hearth, her eyes fluttering open like fragile wings. And finally, she speaks. Her name is Grace Morgan. Her story comes in fragments, shaky breaths, tears that freeze before they fall. She has run from her husband, Henry Morgan, a respected businessman to the outside world, but a tyrant within the walls of his home. He beat her, controlled her, threatened her life and the life of the child she carried. She walked for 3 days in snow because even death seemed kinder than returning to him. Daniel listens. His heart does something he hasn't felt in months. It breaks for someone other than himself. He could send her away. He could turn his back and pretend she never existed. Instead, he makes a choice. He will protect her, protect the unborn child, protect the miracle Lily prayed for without even knowing its shape. And so, inside that small Wyoming cabin as the new year arrives unseen and uncelebrated, a shift happens. Quiet, powerful. Grace rests. The children warm to her immediately, curious and gentle. Lily sits beside her, pressing small hands over large fear. Daniel keeps the fire alive through the night. He does not sleep. But for the first time in months, his exhaustion is not a burden. It is a duty. The storm rages. The world waits. And somewhere far away, a dangerous man realizes his possession has slipped from his grasp. The land may be silent, But shadows are already moving. For now, though, Snow Ridge Ranch holds a secret. A scarred widower, 3 children, and a frightened woman whose arrival will change the course of all their lives. And the question whispered by the wind remains. How far can a man fall? And what happens when hope finally finds him in the snow? The days that follow move quietly, like snow drifting across the Wyoming plains. Soft but heavy, settling into every corner of Snow Ridge Ranch. Grace Morgan remains inside the cabin, wrapped in borrowed blankets, slowly learning how to breathe again. Her body mends first, her spirit lags behind. Trauma doesn't leave quickly, it clings like frost. Yet inside this home, warmth works at it, not loudly, but gently, constantly. Lily hovers nearby, always watchful, always steady. She brings Grace tea, presses quilts around her shoulders, and sometimes simply sits close without speaking. For a child, silence is usually impatience. With Lily, silence is faith. She believes that good things can grow in quiet places if given enough time. Jacob becomes a shadow who pretends he isn't. He lingers at doorways. He pretends to be fascinated by the woodpile or the kettle or anything else that might give him an excuse to glance at Grace. When she finally smiles at him, truly smiles, Jacob blushes and nods as if sealing a secret pact. Rose is different. Rose loves immediately. She brings her doll, places it carefully beside Grace as if loaning comfort, and leans her small head against Grace's arm. Kids recognize safety not by rules or titles, but by heart. And Grace's heart, despite everything, is still soft. Daniel watches this unfold from a careful distance. His scar tugs downward when he thinks too long, and lately he thinks often. The house sounds different now. There are quieter tears, lighter footsteps, and, every now and then, laughter. He hasn't heard laughter here since Eleanor died. He tends the ranch through long winter days. The cattle need feeding. Fences need checking. Wood needs splitting. Those chores used to feel like penance, as if sorrow demanded labor. Now they feel like an offering. Something he can do to keep the world stable while the woman in his home slowly reassembles herself. At night, they speak in low voices by the fire. Not always about big things. Sometimes only about tea or bread, or how Rose refuses to sleep unless her doll lies exactly beside her cheek. But slowly, the deeper truths come. Grace's past emerges in careful fragments, the way light leaks through shutters. Henry Morgan was powerful, wealthy, admired in town, a model husband in public, a tyrant in private. Control was his oxygen, obedience was his expectation, and when Grace became pregnant, the danger sharpened. Henry wanted perfection. A child was not perfection, it was vulnerability. And so fear became her daily companion. Daniel doesn't interrupt, he doesn't pry, he listens. A man who's lost everything understands the weight of stories. He doesn't pretend to fix anything. He simply refuses to look away. That alone means more to Grace than she can explain. Little by little, she grows stronger. Her hands move naturally to the tasks of a household, folding laundry, chopping vegetables, mending seams. She hums sometimes without realizing. And each time Daniel notices, his chest tightens with something that borders on painful but isn't. Hope, maybe. Dangerous hope. He resists it. For now. He's buried a woman he loved. He's sworn never to open that door again. He tells himself this is temporary. Protection, duty, nothing more. But hearts rarely obey the same rules minds do. Outside, winter deepens. Snow piles high along the barn, and the wind sings its lonely song over frozen hills. Grace rarely steps beyond the porch. The world still feels unsafe. Yet inside the cabin, she begins to belong. She teaches Lily how to braid bread dough. She shows Jacob how to calm a skittish horse. She sits with Rose at bedtime, whispering soft stories about stars. Daniel notices the children sleep easier. He notices he does too, though not always. Some nights, he stands alone beneath the sky, scar-chilled by wind, watching the horizon as if expecting shadows to appear. Because beneath this fragile peace, danger is indeed moving. Henry Morgan has realized Grace is gone, and men like Henry never lose quietly. One afternoon, a rider appears briefly at the far fence line, too distant to identify, but close enough to leave a mark in the snow. Daniel doesn't mention it to Grace. She's only just begun to steady herself. Instead, he strengthens the latch on the barn. He oils his rifle. He prays without words. Meanwhile, Grace wrestles with guilt she never speaks aloud. She knows Henry will come. She knows he won't care who he hurts to retrieve what he believes belongs to him. Some nights she dreams of boots outside the door, of fists, of shouting, of cold rooms where love is a weapon. She wakes gasping for air, and Daniel, always attuned to quiet suffering now, simply sits by the fire until her breathing steadies. He doesn't reach for her. He doesn't push past boundaries. He just stays. Sometimes presence is the bravest act. Weeks pass. A rhythm forms, not perfect, not complete, but stable. Enough to heal. Enough to hint at something better. And then, like a storm seen first at the horizon, a shift arrives. One evening, Lily mentions she saw a stranger in town asking about a pregnant woman. She didn't speak to him. She simply watched from the general store window. The man had cold eyes, purposeful eyes. Daniel knows, without needing proof. Henry's reach has begun. That night, the firelight flickers across his scar as he gathers the children close, his voice steady because it must be. He tells them they are safe. He tells them they are loved. He believes both things, but belief doesn't erase danger. Grace listens, heart tightening. She moved heaven and earth to escape. She will not run again. She will not lose this fragile world that's begun to hold her together. And Daniel realizes something else. He is no longer simply protecting a guest. He is defending family. The line between past and present blurs. The new year that began with grief and prayer now carries something else entirely. A fragile, powerful hope, rising like morning light through snow. The world outside grows colder, but inside Snow Ridge Ranch, warmth deepens, and somewhere beyond the hills, trouble continues its slow, deliberate approach. The storm doesn't announce itself gently. It rolls in like a dark tide swallowing the Wyoming sky, dragging wind and sleet behind it until the entire world seems to vanish beneath white. By nightfall, the house at Snow Ridge Ranch shakes beneath each gust, the shutters rattling like bones. Daniel Whitaker feels the warning in his chest before anything begins. Sometimes storms carry more than weather. Sometimes they carry fate. Grace Morgan is already uneasy when the first thunder cracks across the plains, trembling though she tries to hide it. Her pregnancy has been weighing lower, heavier, and she has carried both fear and hope inside her like twin flames. Now the pain begins. Slow at first, then sharper. Lily notices first. She always does. Her eyes widen, not with panic, but with solemn awareness. Jacob pales, and little Rose clutches Grace's arm. Daniel's scar pulls tight across his cheek as he sees the truth in Grace's face. This baby is coming, and it is coming now. There is no doctor, no neighbor close enough to reach through the storm. Only Daniel, 3 frightened children, firelight, boiling water, and the woman he has sworn to protect, even if it costs him every breath he has left. The contractions grow stronger, each wave cutting through Grace's fragile calm. She tries to hide her fear, but terror flickers anyway when memories rise. Dark rooms, harsh hands, words meant to wound. Daniel keeps his voice low, steady, grounded. He kneels beside her, scar catching the glow of the flames. He wipes sweat from her brow. He breathes when she forgets to. He refuses to leave her side. Outside, the storm screams. Inside, a battle for life rages silently. Hours blur. Pain sharpens. Grace cries out. Lily steadies Rose, whispering comfort. Jacob keeps the fire fed with trembling hands. Daniel feels his heart split in two. One part holds the past, Eleanor's last night, fear he could not stop, the silence that followed. The other part clings to the present, Grace's trembling voice, the fragile miracle fighting its way into the world. He will not lose her. He will not lose this child. Not again. When the final moment comes, it arrives like lightning. A cry pierces the storm, small, raw, powerful, alive. Grace collapses back into quilts, tears spilling in relief. And in Daniel's arms rests a newborn baby girl, pink and strong and breathing in shallow bursts that feel like prayer. The children inch forward, as if witnessing a miracle too sacred to disturb. Grace names her Hope, because that is what she fought through winter and terror to protect, because that is what this house has begun to feel like. Hope. Daniel holds the child carefully, as though she might dissolve. His scarred face softens into something almost boyish. For the first time since Eleanor's death, joy does not ache. It simply exists. But peace never lingers long when darkness believes it owns you. Near dawn, when the storm finally loosens its grip on the world, Daniel steps outside to gather wood. The wind has quieted. Snow piles high, and there, tracks, fresh, leading toward the house. His pulse tightens. He follows the line of prints toward the road where shadows move in the pale light. Riders, armed, purposeful. He knows before he sees the face. Henry Morgan has arrived, and he has brought violence with him. Daniel returns inside, his voice level, his eyes deliberate. He does not frighten the children, but he prepares them. Lily leads Jacob and Rose toward the back room, guiding them with the steadiness of someone twice her age. Grace, still exhausted from birth, clutches baby Hope as though the world itself is trying to pull her away. Daniel retrieves his rifle. He is not reckless. He is not fearless. But love leaves no room for surrender. When Henry dismounts, the snow crunches beneath expensive boots. His coat is finely cut. His expression is colder than the land around them. 2 hired guns flank him, hands resting casually near holsters. Henry calls out Daniel's name like a man addressing a servant rather than another human being. He states that Grace is his property, the child as well, and he demands they be returned. Now, Daniel steps onto the porch. His scar burns in the morning light. His voice remains calm. Grace is not property. She is a woman. He says it simply, as fact, as unbreakable truth, and she is staying. Henry laughs. It is not the laugh of a man who finds humor. It is the sound of entitlement cracking. The guns shift, fingers hover. The world narrows to breath, snow, heartbeat. Daniel positions himself between the house and danger. He is willing to die here, without hesitation, without regret. Because he has already lost everything once, he will not lose it again. Grace appears behind him despite his warning, pale but unbroken, baby Hope held close to her chest. Her voice shakes but does not falter as she speaks the truth out loud. Her years of abuse, the bruises hidden beneath long sleeves, the fear that lived in every room of Henry's home. Silence follows, a silence sharper than any shout. For the first time, Henry flinches, not from guilt, from anger that his control is slipping. The storm has passed, but the air remains electric. Then, hoofbeats. More riders. Daniel braces, certain this is the end. But instead, familiar faces crest the snowy ridge. Samuel Hayes at the front, rifle already drawn, eyes cold with lawman's knowledge. Townsfolk behind him, men who believe in justice, men who do not bow to tyranny. They do not shout, they simply stand. The balance shifts. Henry's confidence wavers, his hired guns hesitate. Violence, so certain moments before, suddenly costs more than it offers. Samuel tells Henry the law is watching. He tells him to walk away. For now. Henry studies Daniel with hate sharpened into promise. This is not over. He retreats, But his retreat is not surrender. It is delay. As the riders disappear into white distance, Daniel exhales for the first time in what feels like hours. He turns to Grace. She trembles. He steadies her. Inside the cabin, life returns in small breaths. Baby Hope sleeps. The children emerge from their hiding place. And Daniel finally understands the truth he has been avoiding. He no longer protects Grace only out of duty. He loves her. He loves the child. He loves the chaos, the fear, the fragile laughter that has begun to fill his home. And he will defend them against any darkness that rises. The storm moves on. The world quiets. But danger has only stepped aside. Shadows linger at the edge of the horizon. And the battle for freedom, love, and survival is only just beginning. Winter does not release its grip easily in Wyoming. The snow lingers like memory, stubborn and cold, refusing to fade even when the sun tries to thaw the land. At Snow Ridge Ranch, life steadies into a fragile rhythm again after Henry Morgan's retreat, though no one mistakes distance for safety. Daniel Whitaker keeps his rifle closer now. Samuel Hayes rides by more often, sometimes staying late into the evening, talking in low tones with Daniel near the fire while Grace rests with baby Hope. The children sense the change. Lily listens more carefully than she speaks. Jacob keeps glancing toward the window, as if expecting shadows to move. And Rose, young as she is, clings a little tighter at night. Grace pretends calm for their sake, but fear still lives beneath her skin, quiet but constant. Henry has always returned. Always. Men like him do not release what they believe belongs to them. Samuel understands that truth more than most. His past life as a federal agent taught him what evil looks like when it dresses itself in respectability. Henry Morgan is not just cruel, he is calculating. And men like that don't snap in an instant. They build their darkness carefully, brick by brick, lie by lie. Samuel decides silence is no longer protection. It is a weapon, and Henry has used it long enough. So he begins to dig. Carefully, quietly, thoroughly. He visits Cheyenne. He talks to store clerks, neighbors, servants who once worked inside Henry's home but left before fear could fully claim them. He traces whispers backward through time, and a terrible pattern begins to emerge. 3 wives came before Grace. 3 women who arrived hopeful, then slowly disappeared from public view. Each one was described as unwell, before being spoken of less and less. Then, eventually, not at all. No funerals, no graves, just absence, and Henry's polished smile. Samuel feels the old weight settle on his shoulders, the one that comes when truth begins to surface and justice is still far behind. He meets with Daniel one cold evening, his expression carved from stone. The cabin is quiet except for the crackle of burning wood and the soft sounds of Grace rocking Hope near the hearth. Samuel doesn't raise his voice. He simply tells the truth. He believes Henry killed them. All 3 wives. All pregnant. A stillness settles across the room, deep and cutting. Grace closes her eyes. For years she believed fear was weakness. Now she understands it was warning. Daniel's scar tightens across his cheek as he listens, rage building slow and deliberate inside him. Not the wild kind that destroys, but the controlled fire that protects. Samuel is not guessing. He has evidence, leads, names of men who dug earth late at night for pay that came in thick envelopes. He has testimony from a single, shaken witness who finally reached the point where conscience outweighs fear. That witness is Cole Henderson, Henry's former hired man, the same one who once rode to Snow Ridge hunting Grace. Samuel finds him in a dim saloon on the far edge of town, a man undone by guilt and whiskey. Cole doesn't confess easily. Shame makes him resist. But Samuel has never needed to shout to uncover truth. He simply waits. Eventually Cole breaks. The words spill out. Henry's rages, the bruises hidden beneath lace, the threats hissed behind closed doors. And finally, the quiet nights where Henry insisted something needed to be handled. Cole had dug, he had buried, and the earth still remembers. Samuel records every word. He gathers maps. He returns to the ranch with grim resolve. Daniel does not argue when Samuel asks for help. Some truths require witnesses. Together with a few trusted neighbors, they ride toward a remote stretch of land beneath wind-torn pines. The sky is gray and low, as if even heaven doesn't want to watch. Snow covers the ground, but Samuel has been doing this long enough to know that snow is only a blanket. It cannot erase what lies beneath. They begin to dig, slow, relentless. And then, finally, they uncover what silence tried to hide. Remains, rings, buttons, torn lace. Enough for the law to bind Henry Morgan to his sins. There is no anger in that moment, only sorrow, and a heavy, quiet fury at a world that allowed charm to shield a monster. Samuel sends word to federal authorities. Paperwork moves slower than grief, but eventually justice gathers momentum. Warrants are signed. Deputy marshals ride out. Henry does not accept defeat easily. When they arrive at his estate, he wears that same polished smile, wrapped in expensive cloth and arrogance. He calls it a misunderstanding. He calls Grace hysterical. He calls Samuel a washed-up lawman chasing ghosts. But this time, words are not enough. Evidence outweighs image. Witnesses testify. Cole Henderson tells everything, voice cracking beneath the weight of what he helped bury. The federal marshals lock iron around Henry's wrists. For the first time, the power he worshipped deserts him. He is marched away from the empire he built upon suffering. The town watches, some in shock, some in denial, some with grim relief. Evil rarely looks like a villain at first glance. Often, it looks respectable. At Snow Ridge Ranch, when word finally reaches them that Henry has been taken into custody, the entire cabin seems to exhale. Grace sinks into a chair, clutching hope close, tears slipping silently down her cheeks. Not grief, not fear. Release. The children gather around her. Lily's voice is soft, reverent. It's over now. Daniel rests a hand on Grace's shoulder. His scar softens. The weight that's lived on his chest since the day he found her in the barn loosens for the first time. He does not celebrate. He simply breathes. Samuel visits that evening. He does not speak like a hero. He does not accept gratitude like a prize. He only says that sometimes justice takes too long, but when it arrives, it should stay. They share quiet conversation until the lamps burn low. Outside, snow still lies heavy across the land, but its meaning has changed. It no longer hides horrors. It simply is winter again. A season, a passing thing. Inside the cabin, Grace watches Daniel move carefully through the room, tending fire, checking window locks out of habit rather than dread. She realizes how much of her fear has slowly transferred into trust. Not blind faith, earned safety. And Daniel, who once believed life had already given him everything and taken it all away, now understands grief and love can exist side by side without canceling each other. Night deepens, the wind quiets, and somewhere far away, the darkness that once stalked Snow Ridge Ranch sits behind iron bars. Its reign finally ended. What remains now is not fear, not running, but the fragile, complicated, beautiful possibility of a future built on truth instead of silence, on courage instead of control, on love that protects rather than destroys. And as winter begins at last to loosen its hold, hope, like the coming spring, feels real enough to touch. Spring arrives quietly on the Wyoming plains, the snow pulling back from the earth like a long sigh of release. At Snow Ridge Ranch, color returns in cautious strokes. Soft green grass at the fence line, pale blue sky stretching wide and forgiving. The world doesn't forget winter, but it no longer lives inside it. Daniel Whitaker wakes earlier these days, not from nightmares, but from the sound of Hope's soft morning fussing or the clatter of Jacob trying to be helpful in the kitchen. His scar still lines his cheek like a story the world can read, but it has softened somehow, as if time has finally sanded down its sharpest edges. He steps outside most mornings, breath slow, heart steady. The land that once felt like a burden now feels like a promise. Inside the cabin, life hums in warm rhythm. Grace moves easily through the rooms now, not as a guest, not as a shadow, but as the beating heart of the home. Her laughter is lighter. Her eyes are calmer. She still carries the past, but it no longer owns her. Lily trails after her like sunlight, offering help before it's needed. Jacob has decided that protecting Hope is his new job in life. Rose still clings to her doll, but now she shares it willingly, placing it beside Hope during naps as if safety should always come in pairs. Samuel Hayes visits when work allows, sharing supper, sharing stories, sharing silence. He never demands thanks, but he receives it anyway. In the warmth of the fire, in Grace's grateful smile, in Daniel's firm handshake that carries quiet meaning. The law has taken Henry Morgan far from their world. There will be a trial. There will be headlines. But none of that changes the only thing that matters here. He will never touch them again. And so the days stretch forward. Not perfect, but honest. Daniel and Grace marry beneath the open sky, surrounded by friends, neighbors, and the laughter of children. There are no grand speeches, no elaborate ceremony, just simple vows spoken in steady voices, promises made between two people who understand loss deeply enough to treasure what remains. Daniel feels Eleanor with him that day, not as pain, not as guilt, but as blessing. Grace understands without words. Love, after all, isn't a replacement. It's an expansion. Their life becomes a quiet tapestry woven from chores and stories and shared glances across lamplit rooms. Hope grows strong, bright-eyed, reaching for everything. And months later, another child arrives, a son they name Matthew, his small cry stitching a final seam of belonging through the house. Nights no longer echo with grief. They echo with soft lullabies, whispered prayers, and the steady rhythm of breath from those who finally sleep deeply. Daniel sometimes pauses in the doorway and simply watches. The children curled together on a rug, Grace humming low and steady, firelight flickering against the walls. The world outside remains wide and wild, but in this room there is peace. He knows now that love is not fragile. It is fierce, not dramatic in grand gestures, but powerful in the small, daily choosing. Grace chooses him. He chooses her. The children choose all of it. The joy, the mess, the ordinary miracle of simply belonging. When New Year's Eve returns, the memories surface like drifting snow. Daniel steps outside beneath the starlit sky. The air is crisp but kind. Behind him, laughter spills through the cabin door. Lily sets the table. Jacob insists he can carry logs like a man. Rose sings to her doll. Grace rocks Matthew, while Hope toddles at her feet, determined to conquer the world one wobbly step at a time. Daniel closes his eyes for a moment. He remembers the winter night when the barn door creaked open and fate walked into his life barefoot and trembling. He remembers grief so heavy it almost swallowed him whole. He remembers a little girl praying by the fire for a miracle. And he realizes this is it. Not perfection, not a life without scars, but a life where pain has been answered, where darkness has been named, and where love has chosen to stay. Snow begins to fall again, but differently now. Soft, gentle, like a blessing instead of a threat. Daniel turns back toward the cabin, toward warmth, toward the family that grew from courage and kindness, and a willingness to keep moving forward even when the road was steep. The wind hums low across the hills. The sky stretches endless and forgiving. And for the first time in a very long time, the future feels wide open. Like morning. The night speaks softly now, as if the world has finally exhaled. Snow Ridge Ranch rests beneath a calm Wyoming sky, where winter once meant fear, and now means nothing more than a season passing gently by. Daniel, scarred yet steady, stands within a circle of love that feels stronger than anything he ever believed he deserved. Grace no longer runs. She no longer hides. The children laugh freely, growing into the safe world they once only dreamed of. Hope and Matthew sleep side by side, tiny reminders that life always finds a way forward, no matter how dark the night has been. And Lily's prayer by the fire still echoes somewhere in the wind, not as a plea this time, but as gratitude. Tonight, the house glows warm, the sky settles quiet, and the story closes like a soft whisper carried across the plains. Not with sorrow, not with fear, but with peace. Good night, and rest gently beneath the stars. End of article. Good night.